Chapter 36 of the Life of Saint Teresa. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anne Boulay. The Life of Saint Teresa by Teresa of Jesus. Translated by the Reverend John Dalton. Chapter 36. The saint continues the same subject, informs of how the monastery of Saint Joseph was at last founded. Having now left that city, Toledo, I went on my journey very cheerfully, being resolved most willingly to suffer whatever our Lord might be pleased to send me. The same evening that I arrived here, there came the letters and brief from Rome for the erection of the monastery, so that both I and all those who knew how much our Lord hastened my coming were astonished when they understood how necessary my presence was at that very conjuncture when our Lord brought me to this place, because here I found the bishop and that holy man Peter of Alcantara, and that other gentleman, a great servant of God, at whose house this holy man lodged, for he was a person with whom the servants of God were accustomed to be entertained hospitably and courteously. These two prevailed upon the bishop to admit the monastery, and this was no small favor, considering the house was to have no revenue. But he was so great a friend to all those who he saw were determined to serve God, that he soon consented to the proposal. That holy old man, Peter of Alcantara, approved of it, and did all he could, sometimes with one and sometimes with another, to promote it, and to induce them to assist us. Had I not come at this particular time, as I have said, I cannot imagine how the business could have been effected, for this holy man remained here but a short time, not more, I think, than 8 days, and during that time he was very ill, and soon after our Lord took him to himself. It seems our Lord had preserved him till he had finished this business, for it was a long time since he had been ill, I think more than 2 years. Everything was done with the greatest secrecy, for had not this been the case, nothing could have been accomplished, for the people disliked the undertaking exceedingly, as was afterwards seen. Our Lord so disposed things, that a relation of mine fell ill, he being from home at the time, and so dangerously ill was he, that leave was given me to go and take care of him. And on this occasion nothing transpired, though some persons had a little suspicion of the affair, but they had no certainty of it. It was wonderful to see that he lay no longer ill than was necessary for the business, and when it was requisite he should recover, in order that I might be disengaged and the house be empty, our Lord suddenly restored him to health, so that he himself wondered at the circumstance. I had great trouble in endeavoring to persuade sometimes one and sometimes another to admit the monastery, and also with the person who had been ill, and with the workmen, to induce them to make haste and clear the house, and finish it as soon as possible, that so we might have at least the form and appearance of a monastery, for a great deal was yet wanting to complete it. My companion, the widow, was not here, for we thought it best for her to keep away in order to disguise the matter the better, and I saw clearly that a great deal depended on dispatch, and this for many reasons. One was, that every hour I was afraid I should be commanded to return to the monastery of the Incarnation. The troubles I endured here were so numerous that they made me think this was the cross mentioned by our Lord, though it seemed to me a very light one in comparison with that heavy cross which our Lord told me I was to bear. Everything being now prepared, our Lord was pleased that, on the feast of St. Bartholomew, some ladies took the habit, and the most blessed sacrament was then placed there. And thus with the full license and authority, this monastery of our most glorious Father Saint Joseph was established in the year 1562. I was present to give them the habit, together with 2 other nuns from the monastery of the Incarnation. Now as this house, converted into a monastery, was the same that my relation dwelt in, for, as I have mentioned, he purchased it in order the better to conceal the real object, I had leave to live in it, and I did nothing but by the advice of the learned, in order not in any point to offend against obedience, and these persons, seeing that on many grounds the monastery tended to the reputation and advantage of the whole order, told me I might proceed in the business, though I acted with great secrecy and caution, in order that my superiors might know nothing of the matter. And rather than commit the slightest imperfection they might discover in me, I would have given up 1,000 monasteries, much more one. This is very certain. For though I was desirous to separate myself from everyone, and to follow my profession and vocation with the greatest perfection and enclosure, yet I desired this in such a way, that whenever I understood it would tend more to God's honor to abandon all this, I would have done it with tranquillity and cheerfulness, as I did before. I seemed then to be, as it were, in a kind of glory, to see the most holy sacrament on the altar, and shelter given to 4 poor orphans, for they were admitted without dowry, who were great servants of God. For it was intended at the beginning that such persons should be taken in who, by their example, might prove a foundation to the new edifice, and that we might attain our object of high perfection in prayer, by which a work would be effected that would, I was confident, contribute to the glory of our Lord, and to the honor of the habit of our glorious Mother, for this was my sole desire. Besides, it gave me great consolation to behold that effected which our Lord had so strictly commanded me to do, and to see one more church in this place, under the title of my glorious father St. Joseph, than had been before. Not that I seem to have done anything in this business myself, for I never had, nor have I now any such thought, for I always knew it was our Lord who did everything. And what little I had done was attended with so many imperfections, that I find I rather deserved to be blamed than to be praised. But it was a great pleasure to see that His Majesty had made use of me, though so very wicked, to be the instrument for so noble a work, and I was so transported thereat, that I was, as it were, out of myself in profound prayer. When all this was finished, I think it was some 3 or 4 hours afterwards, that the devil made an attack upon me in the following manner. He represented to me that what I had done had perhaps been done ill, and suggested whether I did not act contrary to obedience by attempting to found the monastery, without a command from the Father Provincial, for I imagined he might take some offense at my subjecting it to the bishop before I had acquainted him, although as the Provincial was unwilling to admit the monastery, I thought he would not care much. The devil also suggested to me, whether those sisters who lived here in such austerity would be contented, whether they might not sometimes want victuals, whether it were not foolishness for any one to put such an idea into my mind, had I not a monastery of my own? In a word, the command our Lord had given me, the many opinions of others whom I consulted, the prayers I offered up without ceasing almost for 2 years, all had now escaped my memory as completely as if I had never entertained such things. I only remember it was my fancy. All virtues, even faith itself, seemed then to be suspended in me, without having the power to exercise one of them, or to defend myself from his blows. The devil also represented to me, that as I wished to keep enclosure in so strict a house, and was afflicted with so many infirmities, how should I be able to endure such penance, and to leave a house so spacious and delightful, and where I lived so contently, and had so many friends? That perhaps the sisters would not be to my liking, that I bound myself to too much, that possibly I might fall into despair, and that perhaps the devil instigated me thereto, to deprive me of my peace and quiet, and thus I should be unable to continue my prayer, being so disturbed, and might in the end lose my soul. Thoughts of this nature the devil represented to me altogether, so that I had no power to think of anything else, and this was accompanied with such affliction, obscurity, and darkness in my soul, that I cannot express it. Seeing myself in this state, I went to visit the most blessed sacrament, though I was unable to recommend myself to our Lord, being in such agony as if I were in the agonies of death. To mention my state to any one I dared not, because I had not a confessor appointed for me. O my God, what a miserable life is this, in which there is no secure contentment, nor anything without change! A very short time before I was so happy, that I thought I would not have exchanged my happiness for any one on earth, and immediately the same thing which had caused such happiness tormented me in such a way that I knew not what to do. Oh, did we carefully observe the events of our life, everyone would see by experience how little we ought to esteem either its joys or its sorrows. This certainly seems to me to have been one of the sharpest attacks I ever had to endure during my whole life. It appears